Welcome back to another edition of Max and Nicky Video Game Music Reactions,
where we listen to, dissect, and analyze some old video game classics, as well as some newer great tunes and that we might not have heard before or that we're not as familiar with. But today we're going to listen to a classic, an all-time classic.
This will be from the video game Final Fantasy IV in Japan and Final Fantasy II in the US.
In North America.
And
it was released on the Super Nintendo in America.
And this will be the main theme.
Yeah, or overworld theme. Of course, it's by the all-time legend Nobuo Uematsu, probably the most famous video game music composer of all time, at least in Japan, right?
Well, also, I think a big part of that is the Final Fantasy series is one of the biggest, selling video game series of all time.
Yeah. And look, the music is indelible.
And no doubt the music is probably part of that, or the reason for that.
Yeah.
I think so.
Anyway, so this is going to be the main theme from Final Fantasy IV.
Before we get to that, if you like what you hear today, please hit subscribe and hit that like button. And also, please follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Max and Nicky.
Mm-hmm. But for right now, let's get into Final Fantasy IV main theme by Nobuo Uematsu.
Here we go. All right, so that was the main theme
from Final Fantasy
IV,
by
aka Final Fantasy II, by Nobuo Uematsu.
Yeah, I mean,
am I saying that right? Nobuo Uematsu.
Yeah, right. There's something that I was realizing during that tune. One, there's no bass really. It's a contrabass that's playing, or
what are you talking about? There's no bass. What are you talking about? It's not like an electric bass.
It's not an electric bass sound. It's a contrabass sound,
Uh-huh.
And
I was going like this.
You were going like that, and I was like, I'm not hearing what Max is doing.
Oh, it
because
sounded like that
and I
first.
really started paying attention. I'm like, oh, this is a bowed instrument.
It's being played in a more staccatoed way.
It was going, but it was
Joot, 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 joot. So it has the articulation of somebody maybe fingering a
kind of, except I noticed that it wasn't as present as a regular electric bass might be because it was bowed. That's what it sounded like.
That doesn't necessarily mean nothing.
No, but also another thing I noticed is the song is, if you didn't have those drums playing that sort of rock beat, it might be more of a classical type of piece. But that's
no, I would argue that. Well, yeah, true. But
what's interesting?
I feel like that bowed contrabass sound carries that helps that along.
Sure,
the way too.
yeah.
And I was going to say though, what's interesting is it starts off with this sequencer arpeggiation going, and then the main groove though is in what would you say halftime or something like that. So it's a contrasting feel to that sort of that quick speed of the sequencer. So I love that contrast of the sequencer or of that arpeggiation that's going on with these kind of slower groove, that sort of jam of the main, the rhythm of the main song,
Yeah.
And it's slower. It has a bum 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 bum.
But it's interesting that that seems to be the case with a lot of Japanese video game music composers, at least at the time, that they would combine almost like American style pop rock music with a more melodic based classical music, kind of in the vein of a John Williams, and combining those two created a distinct sound that emanated from the Japanese video game music world.
Sure, but I mean, they were no doubt influenced by their electronic music predecessors in Japan itself.
Yes, of course. I'm just talking about just a couple of influences that I hear in there.
Well, sure. Well, obviously they're influenced by Western music. That's no doubt about it, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
But then you're getting into a whole culture of just Japanese music in general, how just even Japanese classical music, how I believe, if I'm remembering my Japanese music course in college, I believe in the late 1800s, or at least at the turn of the century, there was, when the style of leadership in Japan changed, they wanted to create a more, they kind of wanted to reinvent or start a new Japanese kind of culture in a way. And they started being influenced by Western music a lot more, and strove to emulate.
Strove? Is that a word?
You wouldn't say strived, would you?
I think so.
I don't know if that's true, but anyway, they tried to.
Strove? That can't be.
They
a
started
word.
creating their
Strove.
own conservatories that where they studied classical music of the West, and I believe that's when Yamaha came into existence, and that became a big, producer of instruments, pianos.
What's
and
crazy
all the
about
like.
Yamaha is they make everything, right?
Sure,
Motorcycles. I mean, what?
But I think maybe around the 50s, they started having there was a lot of people that thought, well, we should start getting in touch with our more traditional roots, and so you started seeing introduction of more traditional styles of music and instrumentation, and so that's
So
what
then
happened
eventually
there.
those two kind of got melded into one unique kind of thing, right?
Well, I mean, there were some.
I mean, you could talk about that.
There's some. I mean, one of these more
how
modern composers, Joji Yuasa, for instance, he was a more modernist composer
anyway,
that definitely
we're
would do
veering
that kind
off
of
track.
thing, I guess.
We're veering off track here.
We're getting off track.
I mean, very much so, actually. I mean, that was a whole history lesson that didn't really relate to this necessarily.
Well, in
but,
some respects it did.
but-
And please look that up yourself and correct me if I'm wrong on some of this stuff.
But this track is very good, and it just, yeah, I like that it's sort of got that maybe halftime feel, or like a two, it's just like in two or something like that, right?
Well, yes. Well, at first you think it's going to be, at first you think it's going to have this kind of vitesse, as it were, that this a certain speed with the arpeggiation.
Yeah, no, we understand.
And then it turns into this halftime.
I love it. This is one of the best. I actually, to be honest, to be really quite honest, I think this is my favorite video game music soundtrack of all time.
As it is for a lot of people. Would I say it's mine?
Not a lot of people. Actually, out of the Final Fantasy series, you might hear a lot of people
say Final Fantasy VII.
But this is really,
I mean, come on.
Where it's at.
Let's get real. Come on.
I would say it's this and then Final Fantasy 5 or 6. Oh, sorry. Yeah, this and then Final Fantasy maybe 6 or 5 and then vice versa, you know?
No, but you're talking about just in the Final Fantasy series.
Sure, yeah.
But as far as video game music in general goes, I mean, there's plenty of others.
Sure, Secret of Mana, of course.
Secret of Mana, one of our favorites.
You know?
But I will say, yeah, I used to be able to play this on the piano. I can kind of do it a little bit still, maybe, but
you know what the cool thing is? If you're watching this and you're a musician, there's a website called Zofar.net. At least that was the first one we knew about that provided video game music tracks that we could listen to, and you had to get certain kinds of special players on your computer. This is way back, 20 years ago plus, and what you could do is you could separate the channels and listen to what each instrument is doing, and you could start learning how to play it on.
And this was one of the songs that I did that with, which helped me learn about music theory, actually. So it comes full circle.
There you go.
The Japanese are taking from the West, and then I'm taking from the Japanese to learn about Western music theory.
There you go. Hey, if you guys liked what you heard and saw today, make sure to hit that subscribe button, give us a like on this video, and make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Max and Nicky.
That's right.
That'll do it for this edition of Max and Nicky's Video Game Music Reactions.
See you next time.